everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'd like to welcome in this particular Pride Month video, Brian, Pastor Brian. I'll remind everyone that he just finished your MDiv, right, last month. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, congrats.
And also Kyell Gold, author. And these guys are going to be helping us talk today about issues in Pride Month, including being an ally to oppressed populations in the United States. So, Brian, would you like to start off with a few words, and then I'll let Kyell kind of introduce what he wants to say?
Sure. My name is Brian. My pronouns are he or el, or they or as, and I am a cisgendered gay man. And I always say I'm gay by birth and I'm queer by choice, and because queer really, I think, is a conscious step to live in the margins and to not try and conform or be accepted, but to demand that I be safe to live where I am, how I am. And that'll come up, I think, probably because when you start asking me about what's an ally, well, that'll come up. So, yeah, my first thought is just I appreciate anybody who finds people who are sincere and trustworthy and really tries to educate themselves because it is 2023 and we've always been here in every place and every time and every culture. There's no such thing as any time or place of humanity where queer people weren't present, and most of the time we've been revered for our gifts and our talents. So it's time for everybody in this country to kind of not move on and erase us and assimilate us, but to let us be ourselves and to find out who you are. So thank you.
All right, Kyell.
Hi, I'm Kyell Gold. I'm cis and gay and poly, and my pronouns are he, him, but if you use they, I won't be offended at all. And I think I've been thinking a lot about allyship recently because for most of my adult life, I've felt like being gay was something that I needed allies for. I was always grateful when I could tell someone my secret, is how I thought of it. And recently, probably dating back to, was it 2014 when the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage? I'm not, I mean, gay people are still not accepted everywhere, but I live in the Bay Area of California, and it feels as accepted here as it's ever been in my whole life. And in the last few years, I've found that when I am looking at queer activism and queer causes and frontiers, I've found that more and more I've been thinking of myself as an ally rather than necessarily a beneficiary of those causes. There's certainly still a lot of work to be done with gay rights and gay marriage and so on. The Congress just passed the law protecting the gay marriage, which surprisingly passed with very little fanfare after the Supreme Court decision on abortion, and Clarence Thomas was saying, like, we might overturn anything now. But it seems to me like the areas that most need my attention and work right now are areas where I'm an ally in the way race is treated in America, and specifically trans people right now. This is Pride Month, and I have a lot of trans friends. The furry community has always been very trans friendly, and they're under attack in a way that feels very familiar to me from the early 2000s, when people were just starting to see that gay people wanted to be treated like normal people, and then we got all this demonization, and that's exactly what's happening now. So that was that was my take on allyship, was that you can be a member of a marginalized population and also still need to be an ally to other populations.
Okay, I think it's important. We've seen a lot of backlash lately. We've got trying to get the library hours with the drag queens reading books somehow has become a major national problem. I don't know that any of those people were protesting Uncle Milty when he was dressing up as a woman in the 50s or early 60s or whatever. But now it's a problem. We've had the Bud Light thing where they had a trans person, I assume drinking beer or whatever. I haven't seen the advert, and
Yep.
a pregnant trans man on the cover of some magazine the other week. So we've seen a lot of outrage lately. I don't know how much of it is real.
The same trans woman who did the Bud Light ad got her picture taken with Tony the Tiger recently, and so now everyone's mad at Frosted Flakes also.
Okay. Well, I noticed also this month, apparently, although he was hired over a year and a half ago, the people who like Chick-fil-A because they hate gays discovered they have a VP of diversity or something. Yep. And so that recently that's become a problem. And it was kind of funny because one of the people who was apparently really angry at Chick-fil-A then went to Raising Cane's to eat their chicken fingers, but apparently they've been a supporter of LGBTQ things for some years now. So getting mad at Chick-fil-A and going to eat over at Raising Cane's didn't really get the point across, I guess, that she wanted. To me, I don't know why we're having all this outrage, because, I mean, okay, the story hour and it gets read a book by a drag queen. Okay. It sounds entertaining. I don't know what the outrage is, and sometimes I wonder if all these people are that outraged, or especially the ones who are running for office, they feel it's going to get them the votes that they want, right? But at the same time, obviously, some people are truly outraged, and you would just want to say it's 2023, as Brian said. Can we not do this? Because if you really invent a time machine, go back to the 1500s or whatever, participate in the witch trials or whatever to make you happy, I guess. But can't the rest of us have civilization, and everyone gets to live the life that's the best for them, where they can be called whatever name they feel is the right name and the right pronouns. And we're not there, but I don't know, I don't understand, I guess, why we're not. But then a lot of these social things, I don't really understand why some people think they're a big deal unless they feel that, and especially in the case of some white men, if we let this go too far, right, then there will be somebody else at the table besides white men, right? And then that is apparently necessarily bad. And so since we don't want that, can't really accept anyone. So I don't know how many of those people are out there. I know they are. And how many, again, of them are just using a fake outrage to get what they want or to get attention. But certainly there's true outrage out there for, to my mind, no apparent reason. I've never been accosted by a trans person or no one ever tried to make me engage in a gay marriage or, it has not literally affected my life because it doesn't affect my life, right? I'm cisgender and heterosexual, and my pronouns are she and her. And I get misgendered a lot in the winter when I'm wearing a coat and my hair is really short, So a lot of times people come up behind me in stores and they'll say something like, "Hey, sir, can I help you?" And even happened once in an Olive Garden. The server came and said something like, "Are you ready to order, sir?" or something, and then noticed that I wasn't a man, or obviously a man, I guess, and was so apologetic. I'm like, it's fine, But then the manager came out, right, and had to apologize, and it's like, yeah, but I don't care. I'm the one with the privilege, right? If someone misgenders me and calls me him or her, no big deal to me. It's just like whatever. But I can afford to do that, right? Because I'm just like, it doesn't affect me. But I'm not part of the population that's going to be affected. So one of the questions I think it comes up then for Pride Month is what about people like me who are or cis-het, have the cis-het privilege? What can we do to be good allies? Where should we be standing? And what constitutes, I guess, a good ally? Brian, you want to start?
Well, before I get to that, sorry,
Okay.
you just brought up a really good example, and what you were talking about in general is, I use the phrase passive aggressive. That's not really strong enough, but this is this thing that right wingers use to play victim while literally killing people, and they're the victim of, causing death and mayhem and things like that. And so that is a really big deal. And that situation you explained is an example of what is really dangerous for us, right? Because those kinds of overreactions, pronouns do matter, but when you get all fragile about it, right, then it makes, that waiter is now a victim of our wokeness, right? And that manager had to cater to our wokeness in case you were mad because they don't want to get canceled, right? So that whole thing about just, we call it white fragility when I'm with my family who are fighting for Black lives. And so it's the same thing. It's cis-het fragility to act all like, I'm in danger of saying the wrong thing, right? So I think that was a great example of that, which is really insidious, and it is the epitome of this faux victimhood by predators in our country. And I think those people probably had good intentions, but we really have to watch out for this fragility, because that makes it out to be that the norm are under siege from the other. So that was kind of what I wanted to say there. What was you had a...
Well, let's see. Kyell, do you want to talk about allyship a little bit?
Yeah, and I think I want to jump off on the pronoun thing a little bit, because we all put our pronouns up in the chat, and that's something that is a very easy thing for cis people to do, specifically to be good allies to trans people. But it's also something that is kind of subject to that cis-het fragility, where you'll have people saying, well, like, I'm just a guy. Of course my pronouns are he. Why do I have to tell people what my pronouns are? Or accusing people of saying, oh, you're just putting your pronouns up as virtue signaling to show how woke you are, and it's just and not understanding the point of it. And there is a point to it. And the point is just that if everyone is telling the world what their pronouns are, then it's not unusual for anyone to have to do that. And when there are people who do have to specify pronouns that aren't necessarily intuitive from the way they dress or the way they look, or are, they instead of he or she or whatever, if everyone is telling the world what their pronouns are, then it's not unusual. Whereas if only the people who are searching for a different gender identity, if only those people have to tell their pronouns, then that's something that marks them as not normal. And normal is a made-up thing anyway, to say that. But but that is how just putting your pronouns in your Twitter bio or putting your pronouns on your Facebook page is an action of allyship, even if you're not, even if you're a cis person, because it is normalizing the act of telling your pronouns.
Yeah, I agree. It others the person who is just trying to live as who they know themselves to be. Yeah, I agree. You know, and that's all about the gender binary, which is something we need to talk about if you're going to be an ally. You know, there's a phrase, assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth, and that's a binary because that's all we do. But any medical person who's present at birth of a baby will tell you, and of course we know what, like 90 something specific variations of hormones and genitalia and chromosomes and all this stuff. And so, you know, our society chooses to make that a binary, but it's not. But even assigned male at birth, we have to start understanding that that doesn't mean that that's who we are or how we'll identify all our life, or at any point. We may identify as female, or we may just identify as gender queer or on a spectrum or, you know, flexible, whatever, and that's okay. And so that's something that's really important too. And so yet another reason why allowing people pronouns, because I have people I work with who have different pronouns on different days, and that's their prerogative, right? Because it's not about me. It's who they are. And I mean, my goodness, we call priests father, right? You know, we do this all the time. We call mayors, you know, the honorable. We call former presidents president, right? But so I mean, you know, it's not hard. You know, it is. I'll admit it's hard if I've known someone assigned female at birth and they identified as female, and then they switch all of a sudden to they. That is hard just because I have to relearn it. But again, that's where the fragility comes in. Because if I keep saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry, well, then that puts the emotional labor on them to say, oh no, it's okay. But it's not. It's just one of those things where I say, oh, screwed it up again, but I'm going to keep working on it and I'm going to get it right, you know?
Or if you treat it like, oh, why is that person making my life so difficult that I now have to learn all these different pronouns, and then I feel bad if I get it wrong. That's so terrible of them to be doing that to me. Yeah, I was talking with some friends earlier, the same thing. I have a friend that I went to college with who was one of my best friends for years, and then transitioned when they were in their 40s, and and they live in a different city, so we would only talk on the phone, and their voice was still very much the same, and it was so difficult to make that pronoun switch, but it was something that I treated as my part of my responsibility as a friend, and not as, like, obviously they weren't doing it to inconvenience the rest of the world who knew them. They were doing it because that was the way they wanted to live, and it's my responsibility as a friend to accommodate that. And if it means if it means like retraining my brain, then I'm willing to do that.
Yeah, and so many Westerners, you know, are familiar with like namaste, and the way we in the West have been taught to understand it. Although my friends who are from the Asian subcontinent tell me that's not the right way to understand it, but we see it as like the God in me, or the spark in me, or the spirit of me, or the essence of me sees the essence of you, and really that is civil conversation, right? I'm seeing you, who you are, and no one knows who you are better than you. And so I don't decide who you are. I'm seeing you and you're sharing with me who you are. And so it's just essential. I agree that, and I cannot stress enough, I screw it up all the time. And I mean, I am trained in this for over a decade now, right? And I lived, several people in my life have made these kinds of transitions, and I still screwed up with them sometimes. And the whole key is, when I do, I don't put it back on them. I don't want them to tell me it's okay, although often they will. But that's their prerogative. But I just say, I'm gonna get better. I'm gonna get better. You know, I'm not paying attention. I need to engage you better. Yeah.
And I think people forget that we accept name changes when women change their name, they get married, and no one seems to have a problem with that.
They even go from Miss to Mrs., right?
Yeah. So, you know, we already have the example in our culture where you can change your name and no one has an issue. So let's sort of expand that, right, a little bit, and then you have a new handle of people's new names. I did respond to someone a couple of weeks ago. They were angry because apparently this is all wrong because now men are just magically turning into women and are magically turning into men. And it's like, there's the thing. We're not talking about magic. No one's magically doing anything. They just now can tell you, you know, these are my pronouns, this is my name. Whereas before, perhaps they, it was too oppressive or too frightening, or there was too much danger. So yeah, they went ahead and they were Joe Smith, even though they felt they were Jane Smith or whatever, because they were scared, right? They couldn't come out and tell you. But now that they've come out and tell you, you're like, oh, it just magically happened, like this very moment. And why are we allowing people to just magically decide things? And it's like, yeah, no magic required.
Notice the patriarchy in that language of allowing, right there. That's very much how I see it. And of course, it's all built on this fake binary. And it's like, well, yeah, that's because your whole worldview is false, and so sorry, the truth hurts. There's no such thing as man separate from woman. I mean, that's just insane. So it's crazy.
Well, everything works on a spectrum, really, and people, but a binary is easy. And
right.
Humans do it with everything, right? Black, white, up, down, left, right. We classify things in very clear boxes, and then when things get messier, we get more unhappy that we have to track all the mess. It doesn't matter if it's gender or sexuality or maybe color schemes in your house. I don't know, but once things start getting messier and people are just like, can't we go back? And I've certainly seen several posts this month, bewailing why can't things be, the way they used to be, right? Which just means let's erase all the trans people and gay people because I don't want to see them or cope with them. They could just go back in the closet because that was better for me, right? It was my comfort level was good, and now my comfort level's been disturbed, and you shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
And I think when we see posts like that, this is another opportunity for allyship. And I want to be a little careful here because there's also like the savior complex thing where people who are trying too hard to be allies will kind of run into the defense of the gay people or the trans people, and that's not always what's needed. But when you see people making posts on social media who are sort of saying, why can't things go back to the way they are? Why can't blah, blah, blah? I don't think it's out of line to volunteer to explain and say, look, if you're really interested in having this conversation, then, here is my reasoning as a cis person, a het person, kind of emphasize the similarities. I'm assuming these are cis-het people who are complaining about pride, and saying, these are my reasons for supporting pride. This is why I feel like it's worthwhile to have this diversity in our society. If there are, I've had cis people jump into conversations about gay rights and or het people jump into conversations about gay rights and kind of argue with gay people, which is not a good look. And so if there are gay or trans LGBTQ people in the conversation already, then sometimes the best thing you can do as an ally is just listen to what they have to say, listen, and then if it looks like they might need help, ask privately, hey, would it help for me to jump in? I'm let them take the lead is kind of how I feel like listening is a big part of being an ally, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're describing something that's great. I mean, all love to my frontline folks in St. Louis Ferguson from Expect Us, because I could never understand queer theory the way I do now had they not taught me liberation for Black lives, bodies, and souls, right? And so all these things, man, are things they had to teach me because I come in there with all my patriarchy and all my white supremacy and all those things. And I had to learn this. And boy, patriarchy and white supremacy and colonialism. It all comes into this, which, by the way, if you're an academic, you've got Said and Orientalism you can read, Jacques Derrida, and read about postmodernism, postcolonialism, deconstructionism. There's so many people that you can read about that, because this is all one cloth. It really is. Patriarchy and colonialism, all of this, and really all homophobia, in my opinion, and transphobia is all really misogyny, because it all comes down really to, and in a post-colonial way of looking at it, male is good, and the further you get, white male, cis white male is good, and the further you get away from it, the less your value. And even to where, and especially if you give up some of this voluntarily, right? Or if you try and take some of this that they don't think you deserve. And so, I think that there is an academic basis for this, right? This isn't just coming out of nowhere. And it's been since the 70s, people have been looking at this. So I think that's a great idea. I love that you talked about listening. All this comes from what I learned as a white ally, because we come in and we take up all the space, right? And so,
Yep.
A straight white woman, which, by the way, Martha, I was going to kind of add, I try and avoid it. But again, a thing I learned in this movement in the Streets for Black Lives is that the tradition of white womanhood being an excuse to go after people, white women, as we see in Congress and things like that, are also playing a really big role in kind of heightening this to the level so that white men have an excuse to be angry and violent towards us, right? Like, so that is something that I thought was interesting. But when I often see like these well-meaning white women come in and say, well, if your family disowned you, I'm your mom now, right? And like, yeah, no thanks, right? Like, that's really presumptuous. Or like, I'm a mama bear for trans kids. Just kind of watch out. You were so right, Kyell. I hear people pushing back on that all the time, because what it's doing is you're centering yourself and you're erasing the othered people. So very great lesson in allyship. And I know so many incredible women that just want to help. Men don't say it as much as I'm your mom now. Like I say, you can call me daddy if you want, but that's a whole other thing. But I think those are great points. Be careful when we center ourselves, and that's why listening is so important. Even in my job all day long as a chaplain, I'm constantly in my head saying, just listen, don't speak, give space, don't fix it, don't have an opinion. We can't understand anyone else. We never will. I will never understand what it is to be trans. I will never understand what it is to be black. I will never understand what it is to be a woman. And so the goal is never to understand. The goal is to listen and to make space so that others can live as they want to live. That's all. And when they have to do all the emotional labor, they get tired of it. And that's why, as an ally, I have to speak to cis white men. I have to speak to gay men. I have done a huge amount, you alluded to it, I think, a huge amount of work with these, affluent gay white circuit boys who think that they speak for the entire gay community, and they think pride is all about their shirtless circuit party, and things like that. So it's within our movement too. All of us are constantly in power, out of power. There's all these kind of dynamics all the time. And that's the most basic question. Who has the power in this situation? And if it's me, then I need to shut up and listen.
I think it's a good point. Listening is important because we won't ever understand someone else's where they're coming from, and I've seen a lot of people pushing back on white people in terms of racism, who want to tell black people what black people's experience has been, despite not being black themselves. So I'm sure that there are people who do that with the trans community or the gay community, the poly community, the furry community. And I think one of the first steps as an ally is you just got to understand it's not about you, right? And that's pretty freeing, because people are like, does this make you feel bad? Or people want to make one people feel guilty or something, and it's like, guilty. I just feel like I should, figure out my responsibility and what I should do. I didn't make the system, but I'm living in it, right? So whether it's racism or misogyny or anti-trans things, whatever it is, what can I do? Because I'm sitting here and not really, maybe I'm being affected by misogyny, but most of the things don't affect my life like that. So I need to understand at least how it affects other people. I can never understand what it is to live like that and to be in the closet or anything like that. So, but people can tell me what it's like, but I do need to shut up then and say, it's not me. I just I don't accept it as a guilt because I didn't build it. But let's figure out what to do about it now, right?
Yeah. I've said on this channel a million times, I struggle with identifying as a Christian pastor. But during my clinicals, my supervisor and I were talking, and I learned it again from Black Lives Movement. I'm white. I can't change that. I was formed a white supremacist, a racist. I can't help it. I was formed that way. There's no way in my opinion, you can't grow up white in this country and not be a racist. But I have to work every day to be anti-racist, to be liberating for all people. And I fail all the time, and I forget all the time, and I slip back into things all the time. Well, I had to identify, I'm from Christian culture, that's my training, that's my experience, but I have to be liberating. I have to be, go out of my way to make sure that non-religious people, that non-Christians, that people hurt by the Christian church are comfortable and safe. And that I don't just presume that my hegemonic Christianity is the context of the room, right? Well, and the same thing happens in every liberation movement. So, I mean, I think that's a great point about how to come at it.
I think you bring up a really good point there that's worth me talking a little more, which is that it is a process. And being an ally isn't as simple as deciding, I'm going to be an ally, and then from that day forward, you flip the switch. Because there will be failures. We were talking a little bit about friends that we had known in a certain identity for years who have then realized that they want to live in a different identity, which involves different pronouns or perhaps different names, and that it's hard to remember those pronouns when we have those memory paths and things we've grown up with that are ingrained, and that it is a process to remember that, but it's a process that's worth doing. And there's a line between, well, I'm not going to do it at all, versus, oh, I can't do it perfectly, therefore I'm a terrible person. Like, you're allowed to make mistakes as long as you are trying to learn and you correct your mistakes as soon as you can, and realize what they are, or if you don't realize them and someone points them out to you, acknowledge and correct. And the process of learning and continuing to grow is a really important one, I think, in any field. I mean, in allyship, it's difficult because there are other people's emotional well-being at stake, and we're social animals. And so if we made someone else feel bad, most of us are brought up to feel bad about that. And it's something that, and there may be people who are our friends who say, it's fine, and say, I'm going to do better, I'm going to improve, I'm working at it. There may be people who get really upset. And maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's that it's the fifth time that day that happened, and
That's
they've
right.
just had enough. But you have to acknowledge that and say, look, I'm really, really sorry. I'm working to improve, because that's what we all have to do, is just keep working at it.
Yeah. Amen. Another thing that we talk about in healing and care for people is trauma informed. Well, first of all, in our society, we're punished and shamed since birth for all the things that we need to be healthy and happy and whole, I think, and we have to recover that. But so again, like you just said, microaggressions, macroaggressions. I have a friend, who will post on, on their social media, it's a great day. They didn't dead name me at the doctor. Well, for those who don't know what dead named is, it's like if I've changed my identity and my name, and often there's a lot of trauma behind when you were living under that name. And so, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like you said, people who are so visibly different in any way, other than any way, they're, I know when I just put on here in El Paso, Texas, which is the least Texas of all Texas, I put on a Colin Kaepernick shirt sometimes and wear it out. And sometimes people say things, sometimes people stare at me, sometimes people flick me off. I even ask myself, if I order at a restaurant, are they going to spit in it, right? Because of the way some people look at me. And that's just putting on a shirt. I mean, there are people out there trying to be themselves, because it's essential to be the core of who you are. You can't begin to heal while you're denying who you are. And so that's such a great point, man. It's definitely, no matter what I have to do to try and help other people find their liberation, I can, and I have to do it, and I'll screw it up, and then I just have to get right back up on the horse, because it's not about me. In that situation, It's not about me.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can't declare yourself an ally. Did I say that? That's the worst, when people say, I'm an ally. It's like, I mean, clearly we know who the allies are, and they know that they're allies. I mean, but, once again, don't center yourself.
Right.
In that situation.
Right. Like, who are you saying that for?
I love it when I read it online. I'm not a racist, but, right? Like, I'm not, I'm not a transphobe, but.
But I try to point this out to my students, that when we talk about these issues, it's not me calling them all racists or something. It's like, we've grown up in this society. It's patriarchal. It's racist. Where people like trans people are othered and murdered. And we should be able to talk about that and understand that, because we grew up like that. And you made this point, Brian, that white people, you say, oh, white people are racist. And it's like, and I'll tell my students that, and I'll say, it's not in the sense that we're all going burning crosses on people's lawns or something, but we grew up in this system, and it's like a fish swimming through water. We don't even notice, right? We've been given the privilege. We're swimming around, and we just don't understand what we're swimming in. So we have to start becoming more self-aware and realize, okay, this is what's going on. This is how we live. This is how I was raised. And you won't always get around all of it, whether it's racism or anything else. But you can start to understand that that's what was done to you being raised in a society, and now you can start learning how to change that in yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I tell my story, this isn't about racism, but I read an article a few years ago about this woman. She designs the surveys that kind of where they have like the same resume, but they have different names on them, and then you go and you see that who gets a call back, who gets, an interview. And when you give these surveys to people, usually the survey that has a traditionally male name on it will do much better than the survey or the resume with a traditionally female name on it. And people don't realize that it was the same resume, just that the first name is different. So why are these two people being evaluated so differently? Yeah. And so this woman, apparently, her PhD is in this. She's all of her courses she teaches. I don't remember what university they're about this. She does this survey, and so one day she takes it herself. I guess she was bored. I can't remember why. And she figures, it's my survey. I know the answers I'm looking for. When I do this, I'm gonna overcompensate, whatever. But when she looked at it later and crunched the numbers, she had rated the resumes with male names higher. And she was stunned, and she's like, how does it even happen? This is my whole life is devoted to this, But it comes down again to, this is how you grew up, right? This is what you value. Men are more competent or whatever. A man's going to do a better job. And you don't have to think about it in your head consciously, but it's in there, right? And even this woman finds that she hasn't been able to completely undo that, right? Despite this lifetime of work. So we have work to do on ourselves, and we're not maybe get it perfect, but we can try. We do try to recognize it and do better.
Yeah.
All right.
Kyle? Oh, I was going to say, I took a survey like that. It measured reaction time. It would show you pictures of heterosexual couples and homosexual couples, and it would measure your reaction time and as far as how you like rated them. And this was how long ago? Maybe 20 years ago. And I took the survey, and it said, "Oh, you're slightly biased towards heterosexual couples." And I'd been in a gay relationship for a while. I was out, and it's just, same reaction. I was like, "Oh God, that's still in there."
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's again kind of, I guess, what's been our theme of talking about allyship, which is none of us, none of us are perfect at this, and there's nobody who's exempt from this, having to be self-aware about this. I think all the time, white men like me and how I was raised to be is to go into a situation, feel my gut, have an opinion, and then stand by my opinion. And we see that all the time. And so, a black person will say, but this is what it's like. And the white person will think, oh, well, maybe prove it to me, right? Or the same thing, like a woman will say, that there's sexism, and a white man will say, I'm not sexist, there's no sexism, right? But like every system in our society is built by cis white males, especially affluent ones, to benefit affluent cis white males. And so we don't understand how often in our privilege we decide what's right and wrong, rather than I literally have no opinion about what it's like to be black because I have no idea what it's like to be black. And it's hard. I feel all the time. But it's funny. I had, again, in my clinicals, he kept wanting me to have an opinion about things. I'm like, I don't have an opinion about that. It's taken me years to train myself not to have an opinion about everything, because my opinion is useless, in most situations. Let me listen, let me learn. So.
I just want to say, cis white men, we hate to be wrong, don't we?
Oh, it's the worst thing in the world. Well, we can't be. In reality, the way the systems work, we can't be wrong. It's impossible, because if I've said it, it is the fact. It is the set way. It's crazy, but it's true. And I know it because I was raised that way.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah, I've seen articles written by trans people, and they'll discuss how they were treated when they presented as male versus when they presented as female, and now they can see what's going on, how different they've been treated. And most people don't get that kind of look into that world. But I think, you see online, usually if you believe the picture and the name of the person's posting under on Facebook, and you don't know if it's really their face or their name, but it's usually someone who looks white and is using a male name, who's like the gatekeeper, right? If you're going to be a man or a woman or whatever, they get to decide somehow. Well, this person's a man. Now they say they're a woman, but I know they're a man or whatever. They should just go ahead and, be that gender they were supposed to be or whatever. It's like, well, made you God to tell everybody who they are, right? And yet there's this whole gatekeeper kind of thing going on. And it's like, but you don't have to. I mean, but that is clearly not self-aware. I guess they're doing it, but that is, I guess, Brian would as a woman who was not raised male in our society, but that's how you're trained to be, right? To have the answers, to be the go-to. If you're a white dude, and so you are the best of the best, right?
Yeah. And you don't ever not know, because you just go, okay, that's right in my gut, so that's the real thing, right? You spitball it, and that becomes the fact that you will die on that hill. I mean, and you don't even realize it, but why? I mean, you see it. I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything they don't see every day of their life. And that's the whole thing about this right-wing movement that's so weird. And, you know, it's a cliche, but it's so true. Religious freedom is you doing what you want, not you telling me what to, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so weird. All these people who are constantly worrying about other people, that is the disease of white supremacy and patriarchy. That is the disease. And it's really like, I say this all the time, it's like slave owners, right? Like they got to make sure, even when they're not there, they got to make sure we're doing what they want because they own us, right? And it's just really a sick thing, the way people who feel they are the mainstream, they are Christian, or they are white, or they are male, or they are affluent, they think that it's their job to make sure everybody is doing what they think, and it's very weird. It's very weird.
Okay, final thoughts, Kyell?
Man, I'm just so grateful to anyone who is watching this and wanting to be an ally to any oppressed minority in this country, because they all need allies. And if you are just curious and wanting to a little more, and we've helped you, then great. But, you know, thank you for just listening and taking that step to try to find out more. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and again, yeah, if you have questions, I wouldn't necessarily say let's start I won't speak for Marella on this, but, you know, reach out and we can get in touch with you. But you know, or dislike, or write a comment below or something, so that you can get some support or feedback. But there are out people in every community, so look them up. I just want to say I'm grateful. First of all, Martha, I will tell you, you are a great ally in many ways. And so thank you for this idea. And God, I cannot thank enough the Black folks in the streets of Ferguson who taught me. I would not be alive without so many Black femme folks who taught me how, and so many femme folks in general all my life who have held me when I didn't know how to heal, you know. And now, thank God, I have some tools to heal and some tools to quit putting my hurt onto other people. But I fail all the time, and that's okay, as long as I keep working at it and I'm humble about it. And so yeah, thank you for this opportunity.
Right. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for inviting us.
So if you've enjoyed this, please hit like and subscribe. If you thought we were all wrong and you didn't enjoy it, you can hit the dislike thing too. That's fine. And I hope you subscribe to this channel. And certainly I hope something here has made you think about some things that maybe you haven't thought about before, because, you know, those of us who have the privilege don't have to think about it, because we don't live with it, so it can be completely ignored if we really feel like we want to. So, you know, if you want to be an ally, think about the things you could do. Maybe, you know, see what your friends need, ask them, and listen to what they say, what their lives are like, and what they require. And it's not what you think that they might require, or because you don't understand where they're coming from, but they can answer your questions maybe.
Or challenge people of similar privilege when they are
there you go.
Being oppressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we need to, it's the 21st century. Can we all grow up and let people be who they are and be happy with that, and take joy in other people living their happy, healthy lives, and just being themselves without fear. That would be a great world. So thank you for joining us again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Happy Pride.
Yep.